All right, let's be real for a second. Seeing those flashing lights pop up in your rearview mirror, it's a feeling we all know and it's universally stressful. Your heart starts pounding, your mind just races, but what if you could swap that anxiety for, say, a little bit of confidence? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do here. Think of this as your clear step-by-step guide to navigating a traffic stop safely and effectively just by understanding your rights and your responsibilities.
So you're just driving along, minding your own business, and boom, there they are, red and blue lights. What you do in these first few moments, believe it or not, can set the tone for the entire encounter. It's all about safety, for you, for anyone else in the car, and for the officer too. So let's walk through it together. We've broken this whole thing down into 5 easy-to-follow sections. First, we'll cover what to do the second you see the lights. Then, we'll dive into the actual conversation with the officer. After that, we'll tackle the tricky subject of searches. We'll even cover the often forgotten rights of passengers. And finally, we'll look at what to do once the stop is over. It's a full roadmap.
Okay, Section 1. This is all about those critical first moves. Getting these right is absolutely key for de-escalation and just showing that you're cooperating from the get-go.
Every single one of these steps is designed to send a clear message: safety and cooperation. First, signal your intention and pull over to the right as far as you can safely go. Next, turn the car completely off. If it's dark out, flick on that interior light. And finally, and this is a big one, place both of your hands on the steering wheel. These simple actions show the officer you're not a threat, which is hands down the best way to start the interaction.
So now for the interaction itself. This is where knowing what to say and, just as importantly, what not to say is absolutely essential.
The officer's going to approach and ask for your documents. The trick here is to keep your hands in plain sight the whole time. So before you reach into the glove box or your pocket, just tell the officer what you're doing. Something simple like, okay, my license is in my wallet, I'm going to reach for it now. This just avoids any sudden movements that could be, misinterpreted.
You have to remember, the side of the road is not a courtroom. Your main goal here is to keep this whole thing brief and calm. Arguing about a ticket, that isn't going to make it vanish. That's what court is for. Lying or resisting can turn a simple violation into a way more serious charge. So just stay polite and stay calm. Now, this is a phrase you should probably commit to memory. You have a constitutional right not to incriminate yourself. So if an officer starts asking questions that go beyond why they pulled you over, things like, where are you coming from, or have you had anything to drink tonight, you can simply and politely say, I would like to remain silent. This brings us perfectly to our third section, understanding searches. This is a really critical area where your rights are paramount, and this little concept of consent, well, it changes everything.
Look, police can't just search your car because they feel like it. They need one of two things. Either you give them your consent, or they have what's called probable cause. And probable cause isn't just a hunch. It has to be a strong, fact-based reason, like, say, seeing something illegal sitting in plain view, that would lead them to believe a crime has actually been committed.
And that leads us to the second phrase you really need to know. If an officer asks to search your car, you have the right to say no. You just state it, clearly and calmly, I do not consent to a search. Now, they might still search if they claim they have probable cause, but by saying this, you've officially put it on the record that you have not waived your rights.
Okay, so what about everybody else in the car? Section 4 is all about the rights of passengers, which honestly is a topic that causes a lot of confusion for people.
I mean, this is the million-dollar question for any passenger, right? The driver got pulled over, but you haven't done anything wrong. So can you just open the door and walk away? For a really long time, the answer to that wasn't super clear, until the Supreme Court finally weighed in.
The case that settled all of this is called Brendlin v. California. It was all about a passenger, a guy named Bruce Brendlin, who was in a car that got pulled over. And his argument was pretty simple. Since he was stopped right along with the driver, he should be able to challenge whether that stop was even legal in the first place.
And guess what? The Supreme Court agreed, unanimously. They ruled that any reasonable person sitting in a passenger seat would not feel free to just get up and leave during a police stop. So what does that actually mean for you? It means that as a passenger, you are legally considered part of the stop, and if that stop turns out to have been illegal, any evidence found on you could be challenged later in court.
Okay, finally, let's talk about what happens after the whole roadside interaction is over, because your next moves, they're just as important.
Think of this as your proactive checklist. First things first, signing a ticket doesn't mean you're admitting you're guilty. It's just a promise that you'll show up in court. Now, if you are arrested, ask for a lawyer and then say nothing else. And as soon as you possibly can, write down every single detail you can remember. badge numbers, what was said, the time, the location. All that documentation is absolutely vital if you need to contest the ticket or maybe even file a complaint later on.
So we've walked through the entire process, from start to finish. And that brings us to our last and maybe most important question. Now that you know the procedure, you know what to say, and you know your fundamental rights, how does this knowledge actually change an encounter? Well, it transforms a moment of pure panic into a manageable, predictable process. It empowers you to act in your own best interest while making sure everyone involved stays safe. See, it's not about being confrontational, it's about being prepared.